Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. I'm really excited. This is the first podcast I've recorded since Thanksgiving. And my guest today is someone that I get to interact with a good bit through our partnership with Support Now and her organization at Toby Dynavox, which maybe we'll get into in a little bit. But I got to know Shanna through a work relationship. And I think what you're going to quickly see or listen to in this episode is just a woman with great energy, great
Yeah.
insights. And as I learned a little bit more about her personal life, I thought she could be an excellent contributor to this podcast because so often I interview moms in the early stages of
Mhm.
a diagnosis, of an illness. And it's so hard to know how those moms are doing later on. And
Right.
Shauna, you are a really beautiful example of what it's like to go through something very significant at the beginning and
Yes.
then to shine a light on where your child is today and kind of that
Mm.
journey in between. So, Shauna, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I just love to share the story just from the heart.
So Shauna is a proud mom of 3.
Yes.
She has a senior who we'll be focusing on today, as well as 2 littles that were born back in COVID.
Yes.
But I would say kind of the place that I wanna start
Mhm.
is with your son.
Yes.
If you don't mind, Shauna, kinda walk us back to 2011,
2011.
when your life quickly changed and the kind of the trajectory of what you thought your parenthood journey began.
Absolutely. So my son is 17. His name is Malachi. He's a senior and he's in the marching band. He plays soccer. He built his own computer. So I am here with sort of bragging rights today. But back in 2011, I didn't know what his life was going to look like, and my life changed. So I was in college for social work, sort of later in life, and we had a very busy schedule. I worked, I took him to daycare, so on and so forth. So one day I was driving to work and to drop him off at daycare, and he kind of woke up and I said, "Oh, you can lay back down. It's okay," or go back to sleep in the car seat because we weren't quite there. And then maybe a mile before we get to his daycare, I look back and I see him having what I didn't know at the time was a seizure. So his eyes sort of rolled back, his left arm went up, he was sort of stuck. So I pulled over and got out of the car and I went to take him out of the car seat. And as I look up in traffic, it's a busy 2-lane road, and I'm like, "Somebody help me." I hope that the bystander effect wouldn't happen because people just don't know what to do. And it was December, and it was cold, and this woman came, and she said, "Just lay him down, just lay him down." I said, "I don't know what's happening." And she said, "Just it's okay, just lay him down." And we looked up in traffic, and there was an ambulance in traffic just waiting. And I said, "God, thank you." He just sent an angel twice. So we get him in the ambulance. This lady, I don't know her name still to this day. She parked my car for me. She brought my keys onto the ambulance, and Malachi was just laying there. So I'm a wreck. I don't know what this is. Is he going to be okay? It's 4 days before Christmas. What is happening? So I tell the paramedics, and they check him out. And as we drove to the hospital, it was like a computer rebooting, right?
Mhm.
So things are starting to come back, and I just said, "Will he remember me? Oh, goodness. Will he know his name? Will he?" I didn't know. And he said, "I think he had a seizure." So he wakes up, and the paramedic said, "Hey, buddy, how are you? How are you feeling?" He said, "Christmas is coming. What are you getting for Christmas?" And he said, "A 3DS," almost like a stroke. Right? So the first thing was, oh my gosh, he remembers. So his memory wasn't affected. And we get to the hospital, Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh. And at this point, he's jumping on the hospital bed. So he was 3 years old, turning 4 in a few months. And they said it sounds like he had a seizure. Next steps, he looks fine right now. You'll go to neurology, set up an appointment, so on and so forth. So Christmas come. From that moment, my life changed because there were so many unanswered questions. I didn't know if this was isolated. Is this my fault? Did something happen when he was born? He was an emergency C-section. Was there a mistake made? What
Yeah.
did I do? I'm going through all these different emotions on how we got there, and then had no idea what we were looking at on the other side. So at this point, we meet with the neurologist early January of 2012, and the tech, hooks up the electrode. She lays him down. He falls asleep, and immediately she called the neurologist and said possible admission. And I'm like, admission? Like, what is happening? I was so scared. I just didn't know what Malachi's life was going to look like. So he was in the hospital for 3 days with getting the 72-hour EEG. They did an MRI to make sure his brain didn't suffer any damage. It was just a crazy, crazy time. So he's diagnosed with epilepsy at that point, and you get the rule book when you leave.
Mhm.
Watch him in the tub, can't get on the jungle gym, all these things that are now stripping him of like childhood, right? To just be a child to play. And he was a very active kid. He walked early. So I said, what does this look like? Now I have to tell him, no, you can't do that. No, you can't be on the jungle gym. No, sort of reversing all the independent things that I was teaching him. So at that point, I'm a wreck, right? He's on the medicine. He was on Lamictal at the time, and it went from 5 milligrams to I think 100. So it was every week we had to increase the dose. As we did that, he would lose his equilibrium was off. Like everything as we
Mhm.
increased, he wasn't sleeping. I was on FMLA through my job, which was intermittent. So I would just call and say, he didn't sleep well last night. I won't be in. And eventually there were consequences for that, right? You
Right.
start doing this work, right? There's so many different things that were affected, and he's on this medicine, and I'm just trying to live normal, this new normal. I didn't know what things would look like for him. I didn't sleep for a year, I don't think, because I woke up, is he breathing?
Yeah.
All those things. He slept independently, but now he's back in my bed.
And Shauna, how aware was he of the diagnosis? What were your conversations like with him? I mean, at
Mhm.
3 years old, it's a difficult concept to explain. Did you
Yes.
explain it? How did you choose to approach that with him?
So, as I would tell him he couldn't do certain things, he looking at me like, why? Right.
Mhm.
So I said, well, something happened with your brain. Your brain is so special that it got overloaded, so trying to put it in a way I was thinking of like books and imagination, like how could I do this? And that's when I reached out to the Epilepsy Foundation because I said, I don't know what to do, what to say, how to explain that he is now different. And I remember buying his bracelet, no, his medical bracelet, right? All these little things. And I was like, wow, my son, why him? Why me? What did I do wrong? So I reached out to them and they had all these different seminars and events that he really learned a lot from other kids
Yeah.
because he was in the room with people and some were much more severe than his. I still feel lucky, even though he has this diagnosis, I still feel lucky. He was on medication that worked and all that, but he would have breakthroughs. As he got older, he started to recognize the breakthroughs. So he would say, I had a seizure and I couldn't get your attention. I was trying to, and then and it was hard because I wouldn't always see the seizures. I would know because the next day he would sleep for 13, 14 hours. So that was sort of the indicator that something happened. Because after that first seizure, they never looked the same. He never had sort of the convulsing one. Well, he did once, but his seizures are more of the staring seizures. Like he'll just lose lapses in time.
Wow.
So it was just hard. I did not know how to navigate it, and if it wasn't for that foundation, I don't know how I would have gotten through that. Just to have hope, just to know how blessed we were that it wasn't a situation that affected him. But then as I started to read up on different things, like you hear about SIDS, but there also is, and I can't think of the name, where they can pass away from a seizure in their sleep. So once I heard of that, it was another layer,
Like a thing to worry about.
another thing to worry about.
How did you handle, he was still going to school, he
Mhm.
was still playing with friends.
Yeah.
And at that time, I would imagine it was really difficult to let go of control. Like, you wanted to be with him. It sounds like you played a very important role in making sure that we're monitoring him. How did you navigate saying, "Okay, I still he needs to go to school. I wanna give him friends and allow him to grow up." What was kinda what were the steps that you took to make
Mhm.
sure that both his educators and friends and family friends of yours understood kind of like what to do and how to handle if
Mhm.
and when these seizures would occur?
Exactly. So we always had like the seizure action plan. The neurologist was like, this is what you give to people. It tells them step by step what to do in the event that he has one. I'll be honest, he really didn't go to many houses probably for 2 years. They can all come to our house. So that was my way of, I need him with me. I need to make sure that he's safe. When he went to school, same thing. The nurses just had the action plan. We would talk to the teachers because there were points where, he was a good student, but sometimes they would say he's not finishing his classwork. I said, okay, so maybe we need to see how the epilepsy is affecting that, right? So he had a evaluation and they said, well, he can use more time. And I said, no, I don't want him to use this as a crutch. I want him to have the support, but not use it as a crutch to then slack off. Right. So I said, well, we'll see what happens. And I would tell his teachers, if you see him drifting off, just, tap him on the shoulder. So the teachers, in the district that we were in were very, very, very helpful. They followed my lead. And again, it was me learning from Epilepsy Foundation, the neurologist, like give me all the resources at that time to figure out how to navigate this. And I started to get more comfortable. I think it was probably year 3 after where
Wow.
I finally was starting to release a little bit and not worry so much and trust certain people. Hey, here's his rescue. If he has a seizure, you need to time it. And it was, I think, scary for a lot of people, like in my family and friends, like maybe not. Right. And I said, and I respect that. So it was really just day to day, the ebbs and flows, and we had to adjust things as we go along. But now he is just, I couldn't have imagined then that this is what his life would end up. And it's only just beginning. He has had an incredible senior year so far. He's in Disney right now. They marched yesterday. So he is just living his best life. And I'm just so grateful because I did not know. There were moments of grim. There were moments of, you know, his life will look different. And it does look different than what I thought, right? But it's a great life. But now there's a next phase. He's going to leave the house
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
That is the next. So it's never when you receive that diagnosis, it's like a stab in the heart. Oh gosh, what do I do? Okay, buckle up. Let's figure out how to make his life as meaningful as possible. And and then during that time, there's so many things that I've gone through and it's never ending. Well, they say you never stop being a parent. And one of the things I remember going to an Epilepsy Foundation event at the zoo, and it was a neurologist, not pediatric. And he said, if one thing I can tell you parents is discuss these things with your child. I can't tell you how many times at 18 they walk into my office and they know nothing. The ones that are able to,
True, too.
speak.
Yeah.
Right. They don't know their medication. They don't know, what they can do to prevent seizures. And with my son, it's sleep deprivation. So when he's really tired, you're going to have a breakthrough. So now it's, if you decide to go to college, you need to find rest, time to rest, because that's important. If you cumulatively don't get sleep, we're going to see a breakthrough. So that's a whole nother, just when I felt like, okay, exhale, it's like, okay, here we go again. So I'm always in this.
That's a really interesting point because I think, as you described earlier in the conversation, it's like as a parent, you want to be so cautious and careful about how you frame this diagnosis to your child so that your
Yes.
child doesn't feel like the diagnosis is them, rather like,
Hmm.
the diagnosis is a part of who they are, but it is not their identity.
Right.
And where that gets tricky is I would imagine it could be very easy then to say, "Well, I'm gonna shield them from knowing too much about
Well,
how they're gonna have to behave or act or respond differently than their peers because I don't want
yeah.
them to feel different." And
Yes.
so what I'm hearing you say, which I think is extremely valuable, and I think that advice is super sound, is actually don't hide this from them because
Yes.
that's actually what's gonna allow them to be more independent
Hmm.
and and it sounds like even more confident
Yeah.
in their abilities, but also kind of how they push themselves to be the best version of themselves.
Mhm.
And so I think that's great advice, not just for families with a child with epilepsy, but really
Yeah, anything.
any
Yeah.
diagnosis, because
Mhm.
ultimately I think the goal is that your child feels empowered by
Yes.
whatever situation they're in. And I'm sure there's a line of what age and how to do it,
Right,
but
right.
that makes so much sense to me.
Yes. And I think that, when he said that, it just really struck a chord. I said, wow, I don't want him to not be informed. Like, he has to live with this, right? And over the years, you'll hear, maybe he'll grow out of it, maybe he'll, and I always say, and what if he doesn't?
Mm.
So it's, if you want to be optimistic, pessimist, whatever, it's just the reality is maybe he will and maybe he won't. And however that looks, I want him to be equipped. And I remember, I think he was around maybe 10 and he gets blood work every 6 months. And the doctor called me and she said, there's no medicine in his system. I said, that can't be. He has taken his medicine with no problem. I never had issue with it. And so much so that I would say, "Here's your meds." I didn't watch him take it. And I said, "Well, Doctor Clevis, there's no way he takes this medicine. They need to retest it. There's a mistake." Like all these things, right? And I got off with her and I said, "Mel, let me talk to you." And I said, "I just got the call from the neurologist, and she said there's no medicine in your system." And he just bursted into tears. And I look over and I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I don't want to take the medicine anymore. I don't want to be different. Why do I have to take it?" And so it broke my heart, right? So I said, "Okay, we've had this conversation many a times of, you are special, right? We are believers in Christ." So we would, read and I would say there are many special things that are in the Bible that are special people and we've seen healing. Like I always took it back there because that is sort of the foundation for me. And but in that moment, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know, and I remember that I called the neurologist back and I said, "He admitted," and she said, "Listen, Shauna, this happens. There comes a point where they've been taking this medicine, they don't want to take it, they don't wanna feel different, that they don't wanna take their meds." She said, "And you trusted him, you had a great relationship, he always took it, there was no reason for you to believe that he wouldn't." She
Yep.
said, "But watch when he wants to drive. When he wants to do things for himself that would be indicative to him making sure that he takes his medicine and care," she said, "he will then take interest." And I said, "Okay." So there was a struggle there because now he's not a little kid where I'm saying, "Take your meds." He's making a decision for himself that I don't want to. So
Mm.
we just continued to discuss the importance of it. And then when he turned 16, "I want to drive." I said, "Of course you do. But neuro has to clear you, but we'll go through all your PCP and she looked, she said, "Well, neurology has to clear you." And I would ask him, "Did you take your meds?" And he would say, "Yes." I said, "Well, you know that I know if you are taking them consistently because I get the alerts that is due that your refills are due. And if I fill your prescription every 30 days and there's still 21, you're not taking it." And that conversation was, you're not taking these pills to drive. You're not taking the pills to do something. You're taking these pills to make sure that you are safe every day from the time you get up in the morning until you go to sleep at night. If
Mm.
you are in the shower, these things are not just forgotten. These are things that we still have to be mindful of. And you get kind of laxed once you get to a point where like, okay, this is under control. But it just reminds me that nope, let's get back on top of our game and let me remind him and teach him. So, it's a struggle, but it's such a blessing because he's a wonderful kid, so nice, a leader, hasn't been boxed in, like we talked about, Western PA is all football, right? And football was definitely not in the running for him, but he's played soccer, awesome athlete, picked up the drums and music during COVID, ooh, so passionate about it, worked at Chick-fil-A to save money to build his own gaming PC. So I just look at the avenues that have been created, and while I do reflect on December 21st, 2011, I just have to say, you are blessed that he is here. We have been extremely lucky.
Yeah.
And I did not think that this is where he would be that day.
Yeah.
And
Well, Shauna, I
so
would
just have
imagine
hope.
you're kind of, like, experiencing the anticipatory grief of watching him
Mm,
go off,
yes.
and this is part of the reason why I was so drawn to having this conversation
Mhm.
because I want you to explain kind of what that feels like, especially from their perspective with
Yes.
having a child with a diagnosis
Mhm.
where the I think all parents that send their kids off to college have a heightened sense of
Yes.
fear and concern that their kids are gonna make the right decisions. Explain what that feels like for you in
Mm,
anticipation of him going off, knowing that there is a responsibility, a requirement
yeah.
to kind of follow certain protocols.
I just really stand in the fact that I think I've done a good job. And over the summer, he had an opportunity to go to Japan for 2 weeks. That was a true test because, first of all, this is his first time flying in life. He is going with people that I trust implicitly, but he's in another country. He's away from me. I can't
Mm,
control anything if he's taking his meds, if he's not, right? So that was the test. And I did okay, and so did he. And when he came back, he was so changed, forever changed. His just the way he thinks, the way he carries himself, the respect that he has for other cultures, that excited me. To
yes.
see him excited and changed in a great way just gave me a sense of, you know what? He's going to be okay, and nothing in life is in our control. And for those that are believers, and if you're not, whatever, it is, for me, it's God has equipped me to do what I was supposed to do with him and just pray that God will equip him to do the things that he should do. And whatever that looks like, I can't control it, but I dare not hold him back from experiencing life because I didn't get an opportunity to experience life the way he is.
Mhm.
So I'm so proud of that. I'm proud of myself for making those things happen. There's many, many sacrifices that went into play to give him these things. And I'm proud of that. So I stand here now emotional, but just so proud and so thankful that
Well,
he is where he is today. And I'm just excited to see what life is going to bring him. I'm excited for it, and I know and I'm trying not to think about the epilepsy. I'm just thinking about here's a kid that has done well and will continue to do well until it's time to leave this earth. And for that, I'm proud, I'm excited, I'm champion being his biggest champion to do those things because I just want him to have a life that I didn't.
I think the thing that I love the most that you just said, and there's so much to love, like, is that
Always a mess.
you have the confidence accurately
Yeah.
to say that you did a good job. And I think so, so often as moms especially, we're so quick to dismiss the role that
Mhm.
we play because we just want to defer to everybody else and to our
Yep.
children. And I think it's actually so important and empowering to say,
Mhm.
you know, I did a good job too.
Yep.
Because that, I think, also encourages us to stay engaged, to keep
Yes.
going. Because you talk about,
Mhm.
like, you're never done. You're not done. He's gonna
No.
go off. He'll have more independence, but you're not your role isn't over. It's
Right.
just going to change. And I
Same.
think that takeaway, just hearing you say, you know, I know I did a good job.
I did.
It's such a beautiful reminder that, like, and we can say that to ourselves throughout the journey. You
Yes.
don't need to wait until your kid's
No.
a senior in high school. You can say
Yep.
that if you're in the trenches right now, "I'm doing a good job. I'm setting up the right
Absolutely.
appointments.
Absolutely.
I'm researching. I'm getting us this." And and I think the more that a mom acknowledges that, the more
Yes.
that the child will acknowledge that too.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
I just think that is, I just think that that one takeaway, if there's one thing that
Mhm.
people take away from that, it's that you're allowed to be proud and you're allowed to
Yes.
say that out loud.
Yes, you are. Yes,
You're
you are.
allowed to
And
say
I
that
would
out
say, look
loud.
in the mirror and just say it. And I didn't do that during that time, right? So in my growth and other things that are going on in my life, I am appreciating. So you know what? I don't care what didn't get done today. I'm focusing on the things that did get done.
Yeah.
So to the moms, yes, if you read one piece of, research on it, look in the mirror and say, you did something today. right? And not focus on all the things because there's so many things.
There's so
So
many.
just be proud of yourself, encourage yourself if there's no one in your life that does that. Because I didn't have anyone at that time to say, "You're doing a good job. It's okay."
Yeah, you
So if you have
and
those
I think
people.
that's all the more reason why that
Yes,
self-talk is so important.
it
But
is.
even if you are in a healthy marriage with someone that's propping you up, it's just as important to say those things to yourself because
Absolutely.
you only believe it if you say it, not if other people say it.
Absolutely.
It helps. It
Exactly.
helps to have the support of others. But you really had to feel that. And again, I think that's so special. And as I told you in our initial conversation when I was learning more about him and about you, I can see why you're so proud. I can hear
Mhm.
why you're so proud. And as a mom that's earlier in the motherhood journey, it makes me excited to think about
Good.
how how the evolution of the relationships with your children and as they become more independent. And it is
Yes.
such an important reminder that just because you're not the same doesn't mean that it's not good. It's actually oftentimes even greater for those kids. And so,
Yeah.
Shauna, as we wrap up here, I first of all, I want to say thank you.
You.
You have such an endearing quality about you. You're so honest. You're so uplifting. And I know that these moments haven't always been that way.
Yes.
For those people that are listening that might have a child with epilepsy or any sort of diagnosis, what is some advice that you have for these
Mhm.
people? Where can they seek this sort of support that you got that can help them along their way?
Absolutely. The first thing I just want to say, just don't give up. Have hope, because there is, and I know there are those scary moments, hopeless moments. It's a whirlwind of emotions, but you will get through. You will get to the other side of it, whatever that looks like for you. So just keep pushing, right? Because in all of this, we have beautiful children God has blessed us with, that are meant to add something to our lives. And sometimes we don't know what that is, but just keep pushing. And like I said, for me here in the Pittsburgh area, it was the Epilepsy Foundation. If there are any chapters in your local areas, reach out to them. They are such a great resource. So many, Christmas parties, just ways to connect with other families. And like I said, just being educated, when we went to that event with the neurologist, I didn't even think of that to
Yeah.
prepare him in a way. So just reach out. If there's Facebook groups, I'm sure there are many social medias, just reach out because someone is going through the same exact thing. We don't need to go through this alone. Please don't go through this alone.
Yeah.
Reach out to people. If anybody wants my information, I'm happy to chat with you. It's just so important to have somebody understand what you're going through. So just keep pushing and find those resources to talk it out,
I love it,
whatever it
Shauna.
is.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I enjoyed it so much and wishing you the best holiday season ahead, Shauna, and
You too.
looking forward to hearing how his spring semester goes as he sets off. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody just have a great holiday season. Thanks, Jordan.